Hey guys, Jakson Buhaj here with TMZ. Jeffrey Epstein has been a topic of discussion for some time in the media now, with the Department of Justice releasing some of the files, obviously many more to come, but there are stories being released from people that had a connection to him or worked with him that aren't being touched on by the rest of the media that we think it's important for our viewers to know. Back in 2015, a photographer got an assignment that would turn into something far more sinister than he expected. Jeffrey Epstein paid him 20 grand for some photos, but when the deal fell through, a giant bodyguard showed up at his door wearing a black overcoat and leather gloves. Now, the way this played out shows you exactly how Epstein wielded power behind closed doors. Let me break down what actually happened. This story comes directly from photographer Christopher Anderson, who recently shared the full account on his Instagram, along with photos he took of Jeffrey Epstein back in 2015. Anderson recently made headlines after photographing Trump's cabinet for Vanity Fair, but it's this decade-old encounter with Epstein that's making waves now. And according to Anderson's Instagram, nearly a decade ago, New York Magazine reached out to him for what looked like a standard photography gig, and his assignment was to capture images of Jeffrey Epstein for a piece Michael Wolff was writing. The same Michael Wolff who's written extensively about Trump and whose private emails with the convicted sex offender were made public last year when Democrats on the House Oversight Committee released them. Back then, Anderson wasn't particularly familiar with this subject. He'd later share on his Instagram, "I didn't know much about him other than the fact that he had heavy connections to powerful men." Now remember, this was before Epstein became a household name, but he had already been a convicted sex offender. So before Anderson could even set up his camera though, Epstein had a special condition. He insisted on a preliminary meeting to discuss purchasing all rights to the photographs after they were published. And so Anderson agreed to meet him, and according to Anderson's account, upon arriving at Epstein's place, the door was opened by a young woman speaking with an Eastern European accent. Anderson would later spot this same woman preparing a massage table in one of the adjacent rooms. Following her came Leslie Groff, Epstein's private secretary. For those unfamiliar, Leslie Groff worked as Jeffrey Epstein's executive assistant for over 20 years, and her responsibilities included managing his private calendar, arranging his travel plans, and overseeing logistics across his various properties. Multiple civil lawsuits filed by Epstein's victims named Groff, alleging she played a role in facilitating his abuse through scheduling appointments with young women and arranging their transportation. But let me get back to what happened that day. As Anderson describes it, the space he entered was dripping with wealth and status. The walls displayed framed photos of celebrity and political friends, and even a taxidermied tiger. Everything about this environment screamed one message: this man wanted you to recognize his power and connections. And then Epstein made his entrance. The moment Epstein stepped into the room, something about his demeanor caught Anderson's attention. His gaze, as Anderson would later put it, sized him up like something always looking for the angles. Now, Epstein seemingly wanted to know everything. According to Anderson, Epstein launched into a series of questions about Anderson's photography. What did his work look like? How would he approach the shoot? And then came the money question. What did Anderson believe his photographs were worth? And this wasn't a casual conversation. Epstein evidently had a clear objective in mind. And according to Anderson, he laid it out plainly. Once the magazine ran the story, he wanted exclusive ownership of every image. No one else should have access to these photos. His proposal followed, quote, he said he didn't want anyone else to have the pictures after the magazine published them, and offered me $20K to own them after publication. In Anderson's telling, this sum represented a life-changing amount of money. Supporting a young family meant every dollar mattered. In his own words, the offer amounted to, quote, all the money in the world to me at the time. Now, fortunately, the magazine had already authorized Anderson to negotiate this type of arrangement. The conditions were straightforward. The images would remain Anderson's property until after the article's publication, and he'd complete his professional obligation. The story would go to print, and only then Epstein would gain control of his visual representation. And Anderson accepted these claims, and the photo session proceeded. It was simple. Now, according to his account, he proceeded to photograph Epstein surrounded by his opulent possessions. Now, the preserved tiger, the celebrity photographs adorning the walls, an email to the Duke and Duchess about them owing him more than $50,000, all visible markers of influence and fortune. Then, just days later, the situation shifted dramatically. Now, according to Anderson, Epstein withdrew his participation from the entire story. Then, Anderson's phone began ringing, and Epstein was now insisting on the immediate delivery of the photographs, not after publication as agreed. Now I quote, "I reiterated that the pictures were not his until after publication. That was their deal." Epstein had apparently lost interest in honoring it. And that's when things took a much darker turn. To quote Anderson, the threats started. Epstein dispatched someone named Merwin. As Anderson recounts, Merwin served as Epstein's bodyguard and personal driver, and Anderson's description paints a vivid picture. Merwin, a massive guy in a long black overcoat and black leather gloves to my studio to intimidate me. It worked, said Anderson later. Merwin arrived at the photographer's studio, and I gotta say, the intent was unmistakable. Negotiation time was clearly over. This was pure intimidation. Anderson doesn't mince words about the effect. It achieved exactly what Epstein wanted. Around the same time, New York Magazine reached a conclusion. The magazine killed the story too, Anderson wrote. Without Epstein's participation, there was no piece to publish, and Michael Wolff's article would never see the light of day. Now, according to Anderson, this left him in an unusual predicament, right? I mean, the article was scrapped, the publication would never happen, yet he'd received a $20,000 offer, and technically, the agreement spirit had been fulfilled in a way. He hadn't broken any rules. Anderson decided to deposit the money, quote, "So I cashed the check, and Merwin came by again to collect the hard drive and make sure I didn't have any more copies of the photos." Epstein needed absolute certainty that no additional copies of the photographs existed anywhere. He demanded complete control. Every digital file, every single image permanently deleted. Now, Anderson says he complied, handing him over the drive, and as far as Epstein believed, the photographs had been completely eliminated, except one copy survived. According to Anderson, he had maintained a backup on an ancient hard drive, a forgotten duplicate that sat untouched for years. Jump ahead to 2025 with me for a second. While sorting through old equipment, Anderson discovers this hard drive, the hard drive containing the Epstein images. He shares them on Instagram along with the complete account of what transpired, quoting, "Today, I found the copy on a very old hard drive." Now, why is this relevant now? Because, as you're probably aware, and as I mentioned before, the DOJ has been working to make public every file and piece of evidence they have related to Epstein, who took his own life in a New York City jail in 2019 before facing trial. Whether the government will actually make everything public remains questionable. We've covered this extensively here at TMZ. You can check out our channel for more. What matters is what this single incident exposes. A photographer received a $20,000 proposition. Now, when circumstances didn't align with Epstein's preferences, he resorted to intimidation. He deployed a bodyguard to coerce compliance. He weaponized wealth, influence, and fear to manage his public image and ensure no documentation of him existed beyond his authority. Now, this represents just one narrow glimpse into Jeffrey Epstein's methods of operation. Leveraging money, deploying intimidation, exercising power to secure precisely what he desired. And as the Department of Justice continues making documents about his criminal activities public, we're just beginning to grasp the true extent of his reach and influence. Here's what we want to know. If Epstein was prepared to send a bodyguard to threaten a professional photographer hired to take portraits, what other measures was he willing to take to keep his secrets buried? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you're interested in more deep dives into stories like this, make sure you subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.